Hi there, it's Lauren with HSPJourney. It's so good to be with you today. I'm excited to invite Dr. Elaine Daniels here today. Thank you for coming, Elaine.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Elaine is just a wonderful, wonderful person. We had a great connection call and connected as fellow sensitive people. Dr. Elaine has been, over the last 25 years, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, excuse me, I'm forever mixing them up, psychologist, international consultant, and coach. Tell us a little bit about your practice.
I, as you said, have been in practice about 25 years, and my practice is located physically a little outside of Boston. I primarily specialize in working with people who are having difficulty with their relationship with their body, so body image issues, and people who are struggling with eating issues. So often my patients present with an eating disorder. More often than not, people who present in my office do tend to be highly sensitive, and there is often some depression and anxiety that accompanies them.
Okay. And that fits right in because today we're talking about the article that you graciously wrote for our audience, which is called 5 Anxiety and Depression Signs in Sensitive People, plus 10 Lies Not to Believe.
Right.
Super important discussion. I am just wagering a guess that if you're watching this, the chances are high that you have struggled with anxiety and or depression. They do tend to go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, 50% of the time they coexist.
Wow. And you also mentioned earlier before we hit record that about 2/3 of your practice end up being sensitive people. I'm curious, do they always know that they're a highly sensitive person, or do you have to educate them a little
Yeah,
bit?
that's a great question. Most often they do not recognize
Hmm.
or are aware of the high sensitivity trait, so they don't know that they are in fact highly sensitive. And I love the reaction that people will share when they recognize how much the trait resonates. They'll say things like, "Oh, the dots just connected.
Totally.
Oh my gosh, I thought I
Wow.
was alone."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hear you. I know. I can relate.
Yeah, that's so great. So you get to give a little psychoeducation around what the trait means and why. Yeah, I know for me, it's not by, I think it's been about 7 or 8 years since I came across the trait, and it blew my mind because yeah, it explains so many things that I thought were peculiarities just to me. And so there's a lot of value in having a body of evidence, not only in scientific research and psychology, but also amongst other HSPs, just to go, hey, do you struggle with this or do you struggle with that? And here I thought I was the only one, and then I find no, it's many people. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of good feels that come out of that, and you can kind of release yourself from maybe a feeling of shame that it's something wrong with you, that you
exactly.
either did or you're just weird. That's another thing that comes up, weird. And I'm like, let's lasso that word weird
Yeah,
back in, and let's redefine it and reframe it to make it
exactly.
beautiful as a way to describe some of the wonderful things about us as sensitive people. It can be
Yes.
like, don't we like, what's another word? Original. I'm original,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
so let's dive in. First, I wanted to just bring some awareness around the 5 signs that might tip the scale over to cause you to look more at your anxiety symptoms or your depression symptoms. So just to share them real quick, and then you can maybe just add how someone should go about assessing if they do need to talk to a counselor. So sign number 1, persistent sadness or low mood. Sign number 2, changes in sleep patterns. Number 3, changes in appetite or weight. Number 4, fatigue and lack of energy. And number 5, difficulty concentrating or decision making. So if you
Okay.
have a new client who's come in, do you give them a little bit of a questionnaire first to see where they fall? Okay.
In advance, prior to meeting with them, I administer a questionnaire online. So I usually have a sense of what their concerns are and if there are signs of anxiety and or depression.
Okay. That's good. And you know, if you're watching this and you haven't reached out to a therapist before, it may be kind of new to go through that questionnaire process. And I would just encourage people to be really blatantly honest. I mean, we're used to maybe not quite being honest when it comes to our feelings. Somebody asks you how you are, and we just give these, I'm fine, I'm great. That's not, don't do that when it comes to seeking care for yourself. I've experienced that myself when, you know, it's a very humbling thing to fill one of those questionnaires out and you realize, have I been sad or not energetic toward life more than a couple days a week? Being honest is the way that we get help. So,
And yes, I'm really glad you brought up that point because as highly sensitive people, we may have a tendency to sort of downplay or have been told our whole lives that we're too sensitive,
right.
or why don't we just, relax or pull ourselves together, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, when really those comments may be in response to what are really signs and symptoms of depression and or anxiety.
Definitely. Okay, let's head into the lies. And I love this. You came up with this phrase, these lies not to believe, and you just led us into that perfectly. So lie number 1 in your article, things are never going to get better. Not true. Big old lie, right? Number 2, suicide would spare me and others from pain. We know that is never the answer, and it causes so much pain. More than you can imagine, right? Number 3, nothing really matters. Number 4, everyone gets depressed, so snap out of it. Not helpful. Lie number 5, depression, anxiety are all in your head and can't cause physical symptoms. That's a big lie. Lie number 6, no one wants to be around you. Get used to being alone. Lie number 7, worrying will actually change things. Number 8, you have nothing to offer the world. Lie number 9, you're lazy. Lie number 10, you're not good enough. Oh, this is like the top 10 list of like
Right?
that negative critic voice in your head. I think I've heard all of these things in my own head. So thank you for putting some weight to them and writing about them. It's power. You know, we catch those lies out and it's like when you're a kid and maybe you didn't know, all of us have some kind of experience where you take something from the drugstore or something like that until a parent comes and says, oh, you can't do that. That's against the rules. Okay. So just like that, when we speak these things out loud and we say, these are lies, these are not truths, right? We're going to give the truth power, and the lies, we're going to demolish those. So tell us what one of your favorite lies to help people walk through is.
Well, what I think we're talking about, at least from a perspective of cognitive behavioral theory, is that we all have self-talk. We all engage in some type of internal dialogue. I think you named that the inner critic.
Inner critic, yeah.
Yeah. And the problem can be that we tend to believe what we think. And often there's a negativity bias. So we sort of assume the worst. And that tendency can become a pattern and become one's entire worldview or experience of oneself. And then that, easily can lead to the hopelessness and the despair that go along with the depression, or with anxiety, can easily go along with feeling like what if kind of things, which is essentially what is at the core of anxiety, the sort of assuming the worst and the what if thing.
Right, right. So that cognitive behavioral, that little triangle with your thoughts,
Yes.
feelings, and your actions, like, could you walk us through? We just have a couple minutes left. I'd love you to walk through like one of these lies when it comes into your head. Like, what could a person do if they're going to catch that thought?
That's such a great question. And people often say, how am I supposed to catch the thought if it's so automatic that I don't realize I have it? Right?
Good point.
It's a
Yeah.
great question. And often what I'll say is, and I draw a triangle, and at the top is thoughts, here is feelings, and then over here I usually put behaviors.
Okay.
So thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to behaviors. And there's like double arrow, so that, you know, it's all self-perpetuating. But if a person notices him or herself engaging in a behavior that in some way seems maladaptive, even though to the person it makes sense, and is consistent, you know, with one of the symptoms, that could be a red flag that there may be a distortion.
Mm.
And cognitive behavioral therapy is all about learning to reframe the distortions by evaluating their validity. I don't want to get too scientific, but I love this stuff, and I can talk about it for hours.
We can nerd out.
Right.
Take something like I'm thinking of the sign that you've lost your appetite. For me, that's where I lean to forgetting or not listening to the hunger. And I actually I have a bunch of appointments this afternoon. I made a point in my half-hour break to eat a full lunch today because I had back-to-back appointments. And I know if I don't feed myself, I'm going to turn into a cranky monster. But other times when you're busy and maybe you feel behind in your work, perhaps you put yourself down unknowingly by denying your hunger, avoiding eating.
Exactly.
And that's not helpful to our mental well-being. Right?
It's not helpful, exactly, and it's especially not helpful for people who are highly sensitive, where